Here's a quick look into today's episode. People ask me all the time about family life balance, work-life balance. How do you do it for so many years? You know, all that. You just keep making the best decisions you can at the moment that you're in. You know, you say things like, I will never do geo batch ever in my career. And then I found myself, at Fort Benning, as a captain, and Christy stayed at Fort Bragg. You say you're never going to do certain things, and then whatever stage you find yourself in life, you make the best decisions for you, your family, your organization, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so I think if you don't have a foundational understanding of small unit tactics, if you're not brilliant in the basics, I don't care how much technology you layer onto that, it's not going to be as effective. That's the one thing. So you got to be brilliant in the basics right off the bat. Can you kill what you shoot, right? That's the measure of lethality.
At PMRC, we are recruiting significantly right now to build the Army's newest combat training center here in the Pacific. We are recruiting heavily. One, in the market, with the people that are coming out here that are in the market right now, that are filling positions that we do have in the market, but more importantly, with the dozens of people that we are interviewing every day for future positions that are going to come open next summer, next fall, people that are coming out of positions. We call those out of market hires, so that you're locking something in before you go into the market.
And explaining what we're doing and fires, man, that was the second learning point. Like, lead with fire, set the conditions with fires. Before you put any boots on the ground, you should prep that objective to the point where you can walk on.
Welcome to another episode of Teach Me to Fish, where our purpose is to help leaders better understand what drives people. In today's world, the core of recruiting and retaining talent revolves around leadership. And not just average leadership, but motivated, values-based, inspirational leadership. Our purpose is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories and stacking habits. Habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people. Yo, how are you? It's been too long.
It has been too long. How are you doing? Welcome home.
Yeah, it's good to be home. It's good to be. It's good to be here. I got home yesterday afternoon.
Back in paradise, huh?
Yeah, back in paradise, man.
That sounds great. Yeah, well, I want to hear all about it, sir.
Yeah. Where are you right now?
I'm here in Cary. I'm home, relaxing for the weekend.
Yeah.
Trying to.
Yeah. Yes. Look at you working on them shoes.
Yeah, I'm doing a little spit shine here.
You look good, man. You look real good.
Yeah, I lost a lot of weight, sir.
Yeah.
I probably lost about 15, 20 pounds.
Get out of town.
Yeah. I stepped on the scale. I was 172. I ain't weighed this much since I was the company commander.
Really?
How, 82nd diet.
How much did you say?
172.
Oh my goodness, brother. Let's
That's right.
go.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good weight. I can run with these young fellas now.
Yeah.
Again.
Look at that 1504 Red Devil shirt too.
Oh, you like that?
Your shoes.
Yeah.
Shining your shoes on a Saturday afternoon with your Red Devil shirt on.
That's right.
Man.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. The Army issued you that sixth gear, battalion command.
That's it.
Yeah, a whole nother gear.
Hey, sir, it's the best thing I'll never do again.
Yeah. Let's go. Yeah.
It's been a busy, I guess, 60 days. The last time I talked to you was like 2 months ago.
I know. It's been too long. We talked on the phone, like little blips here and there, but nothing like substantial.
Yeah, that's right. A lot has happened. Good, bad, and indifferent,
Yeah, for sure. That's living.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you told me a little bit about your health, but how's your health doing right now?
Oh, I'm good. I am good. It's amazing what 2 weeks in the field would do. People knock MREs, but they ain't that bad. They get you where you need to be. Yeah, we won wars on MREs and C rations, and I embraced the suck. It was a good time.
Yeah, it's like a detox. It's like a cleanse. It's like a little bit of everything all at the same time, right?
That's right. And I had my mushroom coffee every morning, thanks to you.
There we go.
Yeah, PT and attitude.
Yeah.
PT and attitude.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How's your family doing right now?
Family's good. The geo batch situation is always tough,
Yeah.
because essentially I come down here on the weekend, come home on the weekend, like down here, right? And
Yeah.
then I leave on Sunday to go back for the work week. And that's just tough, leaving every Sunday and it's, telling the family goodbye. And it's just really rough. But they're busy, the two, Caitlin, JJ in high school, and they stay busy, and Dorothea's working. And so it's busy times.
Yeah, and you know, people ask me all the time about like family life balance, work life balance. How do you do it for so many years? All that. You just keep making the best decisions you can at the moment
That's
that
right.
you're in. You say things like, I will never do geo batch ever in my career," and then I found myself, at Fort Benning. As a captain, and Christy stayed at Fort Bragg. It just,
Yep.
you say you're never going to do certain things, and then whatever stage you find yourself in life, you make the best decisions for you, your family, your organization, a little bit of everything. But boy, it probably allows you to be hyper focused, on those days when you're there.
It does. First of all, I appreciate you saying doing the best thing in the moment you're in,
Yeah.
because that was one of the two things that I kept trying to tell my battalion to do at JRTC. But yeah, I mean, I'm hyper focused during the week, and I try not to linger around the office. I try to get out of there at a decent time so that the organization can do the same. And
Sure.
and when I go back, I call it my patrol base, the apartment that I'm living in Randolph Point Patrol Base. And I get up there and I could just have time to think. I got a great roommate, and we just kind of sit, and we talk, and get some perspective. So it's not bad. It's a good battle rhythm that I'm
Yeah.
on. But I tell you, I learned two things in battalion command, and I'm curious to hear if you felt this way too. Number one is that my time is not my own at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, PT, I can control PT in terms of where I go, what I do, seeing paratroopers and things like that. But after that, I'm in the flurry of the op tempo and the battle rhythm and meetings and meetings and meetings, and so that's one thing. My time is not my own. And then the second thing is that everyone watches everything.
Yeah.
No matter what I do, somebody's watching, and you can't please everybody. And so you got to be confident in what you're doing and be consistent. So those are the two lessons, like, at least for the first 6 months, that I've taken away.
Yeah. And the time is not your own is not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's like
No,
you
no.
if you got personal things that you want to do or certain readings that you want to, like, you got to do that before you walk in the door. Like, you got to get up early, you got to do it in the morning, you got to carve out time to kind of do those things, because like when you show up, like, people are, right, they're expecting, they need help from you, they need something from you. You got to help them, you got to be there for them. You can't go in there and just close the door and say, I got to get some work done, or I got to stand behind my
Yeah.
computer. You got to make time for those around you.
Well, that's the beauty of the battle rhythm, right? Because you can put that thing on autopilot, and you just show up informed. If the battle rhythm is consistent, you can show up informed, making decisions. The challenge comes when you're adhering to two or three different battle rhythms,
Yeah.
right? So the companies, they have it should be nested, but they have a battle rhythm, and then battalion has a battle rhythm, and brigade has a battle rhythm. And so when you stack those three,
Mm-hmm.
it gets very busy,
Yeah.
you know. And so
And then other
interesting.
people, and then other people are throwing their life battle rhythm. They got a family battle rhythm, whereas other people don't have that family battle rhythm, right? The kids
Yeah,
practices, life, right? That's a battle rhythm too.
yeah, that's right. General Work said a phrase in the JRTC Crucible podcast that stuck with me. He said that he was talking about synchronizing warfighting functions, but he said that the challenge of operating in a LISCO environment is reconciling competing time horizons.
Mm,
Everybody's on their own time horizons, right?
yeah.
But obviously, I know what that means with respect to warfighting functions. But when you talk about the day to day, the same thing exists. Like you and I, we're pretty extrovert. So people would just drop by the office and they'll start talking.
Yeah.
And, I struggle to not look at the clock because I'm invested in what they're talking about. But that's generally not planned.
Yeah.
And you want to do due diligence. And so things like that, and you realize that people are not working for you, you're working for them.
Yeah, and you
You
want to
know,
you want to make time for the folks that come in, or the people that call you, and they
that's
got
right.
something, because they're trying to make the best decision they can with what's going on in their life right now. And so if you say, hey, I'll call you back in 2 days, or I'll schedule you for next Wednesday, it's irrelevant at that point. They needed your help,
That's
right?
right.
They need your help tonight.
That's right. That's right. And that's, That's something I'm naturally I'm okay with that. I tend to I tell you what I did. I talked to my chaplain, and I got this information from BCAP from the OPSYC interview because I think I shared this with you. After that week, they pulled me in, and the psychiatrist told me, she said, you have an abnormal stress tolerance. Your threshold was pretty deep, so you need to find some accountability partners because you can seem like you're taking on a lot of stuff and it not not bother you, but the organization will take that on.
Mm.
And so the first thing I did was I pulled in my chaplain and my adjutant. I said, hey, hold me accountable. Like if I'm going on the deep end or something, just pull me back. And so they'll generally, if I'm into a session that goes too long, or I'm like really invested in something, they'll kind of pop their head in and say, sir, we gotta move to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so that's helpful.
Yeah, we used that when you don't have a chaplain. Like if you don't have a chaplain, or maybe there is a chaplain, but you're not the battalion commander, right? When you
Yep.
do those morning stand-ups and you have that get it off your chest moment, like you just look at everybody, like they can be kind of like your chaplain, like your group. Like this is bothering me right now, and
That's
and
right.
and you're right. Like if you might do a good job of deflecting everything, and they're coming at you from every single angle, but that stuff builds up on you every once in a while, and
It
you have to
does.
have that morning, get it off your chest with your team, your little board of directors, right? The people that you trust. You say, this is bothering me a
Yeah.
little bit right now, and sometimes they look at me and they're like, I had no idea that was bothering you,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you've been staying calm or cool, but it absolutely starts to weigh on you, and the second you kind of let it out, then they can help you with it, you know.
Yeah. So I'm less hesitant. Like the get it off your chest, I think was great and it worked. It worked for us. I don't know how well it's working for me and my team. I have really good field grades. I got a good command sergeant major, good ops sergeant major. And so when I get something off my chest, their tendency is to try to go fix it. And I don't know that I want them to fix it, and
Yeah.
generally speaking, what I'm trying to do is model some humility and quite frankly, just vocalize the thing that's bothering me because it's lonely in battalion command. You got
Yeah.
your peer commanders, but we're all focused on our organization, and so you don't have but a couple of people to talk to in terms of the stuff that's bothering you. And my one of my blind spots is that I think very deeply. So half the stuff that's bothering me probably don't need to be vocalized, and so I have to triage that,
Yeah.
or I'll be talking all morning.
Yeah. Well, you taught me about, sit down for the first, you know, 10 minutes and just write it all down. And as you let it
Yep,
all out, sometimes just writing it all down, now you don't need to go tell anybody.
that's right.
That could be a get it off your chest moment right there, just for yourself. Write it down. You also told me about, off on a run, just hit the record button and like listen to yourself, letting
Yep,
it out, and you let it out, and then you go back and listen to it and you're like, yeah, I'll modify the way I say that, or modify the way I share it, or I don't even have to share it, right? I shared it I just let it out, you know?
yeah, that's right. That's right. And I still do that, and I shared something publicly a couple weeks ago. I think you saw it. I didn't think it would gain that much attention on LinkedIn.
I saw it. Yeah.
But yeah, and just to put it out to get it off my chest, and that got a lot of attention. I didn't anticipate that, nor did I plan for it, but that was a way to kind of purge, some things.
Yeah, for
So
sure. So tell me about JRTC.
yeah, it was a roller coaster. And it started. I think I shared this with you. It started with a tragic death of one of my soldiers.
Right.
Not at GRTC, but in a
Before,
motorcycle
like
accident.
the week before you left, right?
It was the
The day
day I
of.
was supposed to fly. Yeah, not fly, but get on the bus and go. And so I'm driving into work, and I get the phone call that morning that this had happened. And I mean, I was kind of stopped in my tracks, and I went through the formalities of the notification battle drills and everything like that. And about 3 hours after I got notification, I found myself standing outside of his spouse's door to
Hmm.
assist in the notification, which was really tough. I've never done anything like that in my life. I've had soldiers, unfortunately commit suicide. I've gone to funerals and talked to families and mothers and fathers, but I've never been a part of making notification on the
Yeah.
very day that the event happened. And I felt like, you know, because they were co-located in the same city, as his battalion commander, I felt obligated, had a responsibility to go be present, you know, to do that. But I didn't understand the emotional weight. And I don't regret it at all. But I needed some time to process all of that, and looking at the family members, looking at the kids, having to break that news. That was really tough. And then having to come back to the office and sit down and write a letter of condolences,
Mm-hmm.
and then lead the platoon leader and the company commander through that as we were doing it all together. That was really tough. On the day we were supposed to leave for JRTC,
Yeah.
right? And my brigade commander, my division commander, they all supported me stand behind so we can put all the weight toward supporting the family. But while this is happening, so is MDMP for the JFEA, and like 90% of my battalion is in JRTC. And I'm back for the couple of days taking care of the family, which I think was the right thing to do. But then by the time I got to JRTC, we were already into course of action development on a plan that I gave very minimum guidance on. So I had to play catch up for probably about a week before we jumped. And that was tough too. But again, I got great field grades, got a great team, and we just kind of fell into it. And JRTC was a overwhelmingly successful for the brigade. But there was a lot to talk about JRTC. I can split it up into phases. But overall, it was kind of a roller coaster, and we ended up doing really, really well as a battalion. And I learned a ton, you know. So yeah, I can go wherever you want with that. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I remember you called me that the day after that happened, or the day that it happened, and we were talking. I was in the airport heading east, heading to the mainland, and again that's got to be a lot to process, and the organization was counting on you and to be in like 3 or 4 different places at the same time, at least from a mindset standpoint. So
Yeah, yeah. What you realize is that no matter, I guess it put things in perspective, because no matter what the battalion was going to go through over that 14-day period in the box, it was not going to be harder than what this soldier's wife was going through, what his family was going through.
right.
And that put things in perspective. We're going out to a field problem to replicate combat. And meanwhile, this soldier was on the way to get on the bus to go do that and lost his life. And so it put a lot in perspective for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure when you go through something like that, like everybody, you said it, everybody's watching. Everybody's watching. They're learning how to be a leader in one of those tough times as well. So they're watching what you're doing. They're learning from how you handle it. They're following your lead on how to handle it. And I'm sure they're taking a load off you when it comes to their platoons and their companies to say, hey, we need to take some load off of the unit and the organization's back, because that is the most important thing going on back at Fort Bragg right now.
That's right. I'll tell you something. We went over there to make notification, and his squad leader went with us. And when we were in there talking to his wife, she looked at his squad leader and she recognized his voice because he had been in communication with her. But she recognized the name more than anything else. And she looked at him and she said, "Oh, I know you because my husband talked about you and he
Mm,
liked you." And that kid broke down. And right there, that told me that these soldiers take work home with them, and they share these
yeah,
experiences and stories with their families. And sometimes junior leaders and even senior leaders may not think about the idea that your leadership influence goes home with these soldiers, and
yeah,
they talk to their families about this stuff. And that was really emotional for him. So
yeah,
a lot of lessons learned there. And then meanwhile, the platoon that's forward at JRTC are grieving from a distance, and they want to support, but then half their mind is on, we're about to jump into the box. So, we did a visual at JRTC to help not bring closure, but to remember and then refocus on the mission.
yeah,
And, we have the memorial next week, actually, and that will, I think, bring a sense of closure, but we still remember.
yeah, yeah. When I was in Fallujah and we lost Sergeant Johnson, that night, Chaplain came to the company, came to the platoons, and he spent a
Yeah,
lot of time with us. And because what he told us is we have to quickly get through this because we have to get back out there tomorrow, right?
yeah,
And we can't. And it's not that you're trying to gain closure in 24 hours. It's that
that's
we
right.
have to go back out with our minds, in the right place tomorrow. It doesn't mean we're going to forget about what happened, but we're how we're going to learn from what happened. But it brought everybody together in a way that I had no idea that it would. But then because of the gravity of the whole situation of everything we do, You know, somebody could get hurt or somebody could die, and should we be prepared? It puts everything in a whole new perspective of,
Oh yeah.
do I know where they live? Do I know whether my soldiers, are going through? Do I know how many kids they have? Do I know what's going on in their life if something like this was to happen?
Oh yeah.
God forbid something like that happens, and it's, they're not trained or they're not prepared. So that's when people ask me, like, why do you invest so much energy in people and in preparing for combat? That's the reason why I want to do everything I possibly can, so that if something tragic does happen, it's not because we weren't prepared, and we weren't prepared for it.
Yeah, I was at a vantage point to see his wife ask questions about things that we talk about every day, DD-93, SGLV, making sure the address is correct. Because, I was over at the CAC office and they were about to send out notification to an address they had on record that was not particularly updated.
Yeah,
And so, if the leader's not there to say, hey, no, this is the right address, then you
that's
got a
right.
problem on that end. So I got to see all of
Amen.
that. I need to type up some AAR points for my peer commanders because I learned a lot going through that process. Personally as a leader, but then also as a battalion commander watching this happen. On two different fronts at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and at Fort Bragg. We got a lot of support from my leadership. They allowed me and a couple other people to stay back. I mean, we actually flew most of the platoon up. Well, they drove up to the funeral up north to support his spouse, and she wanted that. She actually delayed the funeral until we got back from JRTC because that was important to her
Oh
to
wow,
have his
wow.
his peers at the funeral, and that was huge, and that speaks volumes to that leadership down there.
Yeah,
So, yep, a lot of stuff, and then we jump into the box, and then it's on.
yeah.
You know,
Well, as tragic as that is, and we could talk about that for like hours, right? And I'm sure we will. But like, how was the box? How was the
yeah,
rotation when you once
it
you kind of
was
got
it
focused
was
on
the
that?
most yeah, it was the most challenging rotation I've been on. I mean, this is my third time at JRTC. I did one stint at NTC, but because we were so aggressive as a brigade, we jumped into the drop zone there, and we got right off the drop zone and moved 6 kilometers immediately. Like we didn't sit on the drop zone airhead line. We took the fight to the enemy immediately. And I learned a couple of things by doing that. We have some ISVs. We took on the preponderance of the brigade's ISVs. So I had about 38 ISVs. But when you jump, you don't have any of that stuff. So we forced the soldier load down to about average about 60 pounds, which is really light for normally guys are jumping 80-pound rucks. They got tripods and ammo, and so we forced a reverse cycle to get people ready to fight. Maneuver to the fight with energy to fight. We did that a couple of days before the jump by instituting a reverse cycle. And then we jumped with a low soldier load. So, a pair of socks, t-shirt, water, 5 to 6 quarts. And these details became really important because as we started to move kilometers away from the airhead line, guys are drinking water, they're carrying all that weight. You start to realize that, okay, you know, water is a sensitive item,
Yeah.
because if you get to the objective and you don't have any water, and I think I told you, one of my things was that if we don't run out of water at JRTC, we win. And brother, we ran out of water. We ran out of water, but here's what happened. We ended up getting to the objective, and we seized our objectives, and we got resupplied. My sergeant major got into the fight, and we got resupplied, and then it was great. But we kept moving, taking the fight to the enemy, and that created some turbulence just because of the planning process. So we kind of fought through that for about 10 to 12 days. And then we concluded with really a brigade live fire. It was structured as company live fires, but by the time we applied multi-echelon training, it felt like a brigade live fire. And so in 4 months, we went from squad live fire to brigade live fire.
Yeah.
And we seized the brigade, seized the entire Gordon village, which normally you only get a foothold. And we seized the whole village, and then we stopped the defense. And it was good. We had some success there.
Yeah. Hold on a second, real quick.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that. I couldn't hold it any longer.
That's right. Sounds like somebody was working out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Christy turned the West Point volleyball game on outside on
Ah,
the back patio, and it turned the TV
okay.
on in the living room, and it was like really loud.
Ah, okay.
I don't know
Okay.
why both TVs kicked on. Both TVs kicked in though. Yeah,
Ah,
but she's outside
yeah.
watching.
So, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, the JRTC rotation was good. I learned a couple of lessons, one on tactical patience. Given the speed in which we were attacking, trying to push the enemy deeper into their own zone, it created a situation where we couldn't fully get through our MDMP process. So, commander's dialogue became really, really important. And exercising RDSP, which I got a lot of reps with you,
Hmm.
and trying to synchronize the staff so we can put out mission orders and execute. But that created some frustration, with my company commanders and platoon leaders because they didn't always understand why we were doing what we were doing and why so fast. And that kind of starts with me, expanding on the purpose, that expanded purpose aspect of the commander's intent.
Hmm.
I didn't do a good job with that. I'll lay out the commander's intent, the key tasks, and then we will move on. But I didn't elaborate on the expanded purpose in enough specificity so that they could exercise discipline initiative.
Yeah,
We did it anyway, but it was muddy.
yeah,
And at the conclusion of all of our operations, they didn't understand from the brigade perspective why we were doing what we were doing. Although, through resolve and resilience and grit, we kept pushing. And so one of the big learning lessons coming out of JRT was shared understanding, which is communication, and we're still working on that as we speak.
yeah. We a lot of these things like I'm starting to, people ask me all the time like what are we learning, what are the AAR comments, what are the most common things, and we always say it's like an AAR comment, right? And it's like, hey,
Mhm.
here's the AAR comment, but is it an AAR comment or is it that's why we train in the first place, right? So like
Mm,
for example, it's like, the unit struggles with MDMP. Every unit struggles with MDMP. So that's not an
sure.
AAR comment. That's just training. That's the whole purpose of going there, right?
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
whole purpose of going to a CTC, is foundational leadership development. That's why we go. And if everybody knew exactly how to do everything and they could do it perfectly, then why would we be going, right?
Yeah.
The whole purpose is the training, that is the main purpose, is going through that training. And shared understanding, we say that all the time. Exercise technical patience, but the way you described it a little bit of what that actually means, like that's why we go, and that's why we go and train.
Well, that's right. Yeah, because now I'm a little bit more patient in explaining what we're doing. And fires, man, that was the second learning point. Like lead with fire, set the conditions with fires. Before you put any boots on the ground, you should prep that objective to the point where you can walk on. But that requires some tactical patience as well, because guys want to get into the fight. Paratroopers want to get into the fight. But if you're throwing a platoon or two platoons into the breach and it's a contested breach, you're going to lose 50% of those folks going through the breach. And we went through that quite a bit. And I had to exercise some tactical patience, so that when we got to the live fire, we really got to rep it in the live fire, and we can hear the effects as we were echeloning fires in the live fire. So that helped as well. We could visualize it then, right? But if I could go back, I would just use my 60s and my AT systems, 81s and 120s before we even hit the objective, much more than what I did, and just slow down, slow as smooth, smooth as fast, and slow down a little bit.
Mm. And you probably got a couple repetitions, right? So you probably got, a battalion attack, a couple of company
Sure.
attacks, and you probably got one or two of those battalion attacks throughout. So were you able to implement it later on in the
Yeah, I
exercise?
was. You know what it took? It took for all the battalion commanders to sit down with the Fifth Corps and the brigade commander, and we look at the target list worksheet and work through each target in specificity. And I'm doing marketplace interviews, and these captains that I'm interviewing right now, they're asking, "Hey, what advice do you have going into MCCC?" And I told them, I said, you need to pay attention to the specifics. For example, it takes a battalion 9 minutes to go from a short halt to start moving, right? If you call for fires, it's going to take you X amount of time, processing time, right? You got to factor that into your rate of march at night, under knots, under soldier load. Like all of those time distance analysis matter when you talk about, getting into the reds of a 120 or 155 round. Otherwise, you slow momentum. And so that's a math problem that you got to understand before you even step off. And that level of specificity, I did not have an appreciation for prior to going into the box until I had to see it.
Mm.
It took a lot of coaching. Division commander came out of the woods from nowhere and was like, "Hey, Trivius, what's going on?" And yeah, and gave me some great coaching where I could just take a step back and say, and you're under sleep deprivation
Yeah.
as well, and I could take a step back and say, "Oh, I know this, but I had not taken the tactical patience to actually implement it." And while all of this is happening, you're operating in a comms degraded environment. So you're trying to pass this down to your company commanders, and hope they understand it. And now we get into conversations about risk,
Yeah.
like how to communicate risk. You can't lead with, well, hey, sir, I can't do this. Well, that doesn't really solve the problem,
Yeah.
unless that I can't do this because of, here's the risk associated with this. And then there's opportunity risk. There's we're going to do the thing, but here's what we stand to gain from doing the thing, and that's another aspect of it. So I just took a lot away from
Yeah.
that rotation, and I think my commanders did too.
Yeah. This one might this might be tough to articulate, but every time we go to the CTC or we go to something like this, we're in a different position than we were last time or, two or three times. So like you've
Yeah,
done all these things. You did this with we did it together when you were a field grade,
yeah,
as the
that's right.
S3. You did these things as the brigade XO. You did these things as a company commander, right? You did these things in combat as a platoon leader and a company commander, right? But
Yeah,
now when you go to JRTC and you go there and you're the battalion commander and you're like, it's all the same things, right?
same
Nothing,
thing.
there's no new ingredients,
No,
what, what was the biggest difference being a battalion commander versus all those other things of seeing the same exact thing? Platoon attack, company
yeah,
attack, battalion attack, echelonment of fires. It's the same things, right? It's the same doctrine. But what's the biggest
yeah,
difference now when you were a battalion commander seeing that all happening?
yeah. The biggest difference is that my battalion does not operate independently. We operate as part of a brigade and a division. And division is responsible for shaping deep. And I cannot desynchronize a brigade because I'm ambitious. I have to have the tactical patience, or at least the comms architecture, to communicate opportunity, and allow, because then it's my boss's risk, to assume if I need to exploit some type of opportunity. And so as a S3, for working for you, I was just thinking about the Cav Squadron. I was thinking about the brigade as well, but generally speaking, I'm thinking about those troops. As a battalion commander, I got to think about my adjacent units. I got to think about the enablers that I have associated with me and how to set conditions so that we don't desynchronize the brigade but I can allow my brigade commander some options based on our success. Because the moment I hit a Moscow situation, guess what? Now the brigade's got to flex on that, and you got to address that, and that means that momentum stops somewhere else because I just made a decision to create a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or a challenge. I wouldn't call it a problem, but more of a challenge. Now we got to backhaul casualties, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it was thinking more broadly across echelons, across my adjacent units, so I don't desynchronize the brigade. And the way we fought it when we went was the same way that we fought it here in 82nd. It's like you fight to the last man.
Yeah.
The beauty of the LGOT philosophy is that you may be fighting with soldiers that are not in your company or battalion. So the reconstitution becomes really important. And, my companies, I had to tell them, hey, you guys have to be comfortable operating in ambiguity. You might have a piecemeal platoon or piecemeal company, but guess what? We still got to attack.
Yeah.
And that's why I go back to fires to leverage, to offset the confluence is probably not a thing for battalion, but, the correlation of forces, like, we got to make that up somehow, and it's going to be messy.
Yeah.
But we can't desynchronize the brigade. So that was the biggest thing.
That was so good. Talk about modernization, new equipment versus being brilliant in the basics as you went into the rotation, or how you executed.
Yeah. So I think if you don't have a foundational understanding of small unit tactics, if you're not brilliant in the basics, I don't care how much technology you layer onto that, it's not going to be as effective. That's the one thing. So you got to be brilliant in the basics right off the bat. Can you kill what you shoot? Right, that's the measure of lethality. But in terms of innovation, we're dealing with switchblades and UASs and ISVs and all of these things. Well, now you got to think about how you alter your tactics so that you don't come in contact, for example, in an ISV. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you clear the road? The road is lava, right? You can't get on the road. You're gonna die. So how do you clear the road? Call the ISVs for it. Well, you're gonna need probably Stinger teams because you got red air to deal with. You're probably gonna need AT systems because you can't kill a tank with a 240, right? And so what does that tactic look like so you can clear ground? You pull the ISVs forward, for example, and you can VDO somewhere. But even when you VDO, the terrain management problem, like, do you herringbone ISVs or do you put them in the wood line? Because any counter UAS is going to see that, a conglomerate of vehicles, and now you're dead with IDF. So you got to think about that. The other piece of it is the electronic warfare. Like, what kind of heat signature are you giving off if you're using Wi-Fi pucks to operate, your comms architecture? You got to think about that. Do you use comms windows? Do you turn that thing on?
What did you do?
A small period of time?
What did you do in those two things?
Well, we relied on TSM. You familiar with TSM?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So what we tried to do is federate our comms architecture by creating TSM bubbles. So the farther out we can go, even we put a retrans on a UAS and put it in the air so we can federate the comms. We use comms windows to try to mitigate that as well.
Okay.
And so we were able to hide. They knew we were there. That's the other thing.
Sure.
You don't have the element of surprise when you do a JFEA. They know you're there, right? So, how can you maintain the momentum and not stay static? Because if you stay static, you're going to get hit with IDF, you're going to die. So you got to keep moving, right? So that I go back to fires. How do you allow fires to work for you? Echelon fires forward so you can keep the pressure on the enemy and disrupt them with multiple dilemmas so that they don't fix you. They're going to find you, but you want to prevent them from fixing you.
That's right.
That's the thing. So, we can be defensive in nature, but, in the defense, how do you be offensively minded on the defense?
Yeah.
Well, that's RNS patrols. If you're doing EA dev, you got to send patrols out as you're doing that, or they're gonna stop you. You're either being hunted or you're hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, they're gonna know you're there. The phrase we've been using out here a lot is like, you will always be seen. They will always know where you are. The key is when they do see you, you don't look like something on high payoff target list. Like, you are in a formation that is that they're not going to want to shoot at, because if you're distributed, if you're spread out, if you have some form of cover, if you've got all those things, then them shooting at you or your adversary shooting at you won't be very effective, right?
That's right.
It looks like a platoon. It looks like a platoon in a really good formation. It looks like a platoon spread out, right? And
That's
so
right.
when they do find you, they don't find you clumped up with all of your high payoff, equipment all in the same place at the same time. Don't do that.
Yeah, that the term, and this is a characteristic of the offense. Audacity comes to mind. I made a point. I did the Crucible podcast with Colonel Taylor, and we talked a little bit about tactics, and I made a point about operational art. And it took me a long time to figure this out. I think I was in the pre-command course and when I figured this out. It's called operational art for a reason, because each artist has a different way to present their art, right? You can be creative in your tactics, but if you're not audacious, then the enemy will find you and they'll fix you and they'll finish you. But it's okay to deviate a little from doctrine, to be audacious and be creative. Because if you don't, then you're going to get destroyed in piecemeal fashion. And that's not, we got to be creative and let's go fight, in my opinion, my humble opinion.
Right. You say that, right? And that I put that in the category of like get in shape, right? Like we know what it
Yes,
takes
sir.
to get in shape, right? Exercise more, eat healthy, you're going to get in shape, you're going to be healthier, right? Yeah, no shit. Be audacious, right? But when
That's
you
right.
say those things, this leads me to home station training. Now that you've done this huge, you've learned all your lessons, you've reinvigorated the things that made us successful and we knew that they would, small unit tactics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just throws fuel on that fire, right? But now you say, okay, what did I learn and how does this going to drive home station training when we get back to Fort Bragg? What did you learn and what did you already start to put into those schedules for the next few months or the next 6 months?
Yeah. So I go back to the term. What was it? It was miserably happy, right? To be miserably happy. This goes back to the level of intensity. So, in terms of lethality, can you kill what you shoot? Marksmanship ranges where you go and qualify means very little if you're not doing it with a high heart rate, right? When you
Yep.
get to the objective, you're already smoked. Can you fire your weapon system, with a high heart rate under level of intensity and still kill what you shoot? So it's then making me think about how we change our training methodology to put some rigor into what we're doing. So it's not enough just to go to a static range, go on the line, shoot. No, we got to get our heart rates up and we got to shoot a little bit.
Mm.
We're focused on medical, right? So we had a pretty good data wounds rate, but we got to be able to, at the point of injury, treat ourselves and treat our buddies without having to call, CASEVAC forward. So how do we train that and making concurrent training, a norm in terms of medical training? We're looking at the maintenance of our stuff. We're focusing on that. And then we're focusing on what we call paratrooper optimization, right? This idea that not only do you have to take care of your equipment, you got to take care of yourself too, right? So, you kind of, you come back from the field, you got that knee pain, you got the back pain. That stuff ain't normal. So having the humility to take care of yourself so you can fight the next fight when you need to. But simply put, it's going back to the basics,
Yeah.
focusing on small unit training at the squad and the platoon level. And that, there's a couple of points to be made. We can talk about this later, but the difference between transactional and transformative leadership, that came out in the rotation as well. So focusing on leader development to kind of round out all of the things I just talked about, maintenance, medical, marksmanship, and paratrooper optimization. That's what we're focused on right now.
That was so good. That was so clear too. And the leader development. You're developing the future leaders of our army by showing them the path, showing them the right thing. And they'll take those same things as they kind of move up from one echelon to the next or one level to the next of how to implement those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you reading right now?
Oh, see, this is a good question because oh man, I often get asked this question and I often lie because I think about what folks want me to say. And here's the truth. Here's the truth. I'm reading John Steinbeck, East of Eden. Okay, that's a novel about the West. It talks about what it means to be human. a really good novel. I'm reading a book called Catabasis. I'm reading all this simultaneously, yeah, because I probably got ADHD, but this is how my mind works. I'm reading a book called Catabasis, which is about the underground. It's a journey into the underworld, which hinges on Dante's Inferno, and I'm reading that as well. The first five cantos of Dante's Inferno from the Divine Comedy, and then I'm reading From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. I'm reading all four of those sort of simultaneously. Whatever mood I'm in is what I pick up.
Yeah, same.
And yeah, it takes me a minute to get through them, but I'm really interested in what makes humans human, and the things that go through our head to inform our decisions. And that just really interests me. That journey into the underworld. Not to nerd out a little bit, but this idea of going down to ascend, to go up, and the tension that exists between human will and intelligence, right? This idea that we know the right thing to do. Generally speaking, most people know the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have the intestinal fortitude and the will to do it? Which is the question. And in Dante's Inferno, what you find is that this pilgrim goes down and he knows where to go, but he needs a guide. Virgil is his guide. He needs a guide to help him go down this trek. And through this journey, he discovers a lot about himself, becomes conscious, and then he creates this awakening, right? The three aspects of divine comedy is inferno, which is hell, is purgatory, and then it's paradise. But paradise is the last one. But that's the ascent. You got to go down. You got to get into the nasty shit and the hard stuff, right? To figure out who you made of, what you're made of, and how you go forward. So you got to go down to come up. And so that's what I'm reading right now.
Yeah. When you say you're reading like five things, like I follow the same thing. I have things I read in the morning before 06. I have the things I read in the afternoon. I got the things I read right before I go to bed. Like they're different things. It's them. I'm also rereading the Arthur Brooks Strength to Strength. I think that's something that takes more than one time to kind of go through. What a good one right there on like.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Especially
That's
after
so good.
whatever your profession is, and you start to get to a point where no matter who you are, whether it's a professional athlete or a soldier or a lawyer or a doctor, there's a point at which certain things start to deteriorate, and it's time to figure out what that next strength is, that next thing that the typical what got you here won't get you there, and
Yeah,
man, especially
yeah.
once you read that first two chapters, it's like.
I
It's like
know.
a gut punch, and you're like, you got to get past that, and you got to figure out what your next thing is. Which led me
Yeah, it
to
was.
another one I'm reading is Outwitting the Devil, and I just got turned on to that one about 2 weeks
Oh,
ago. Napoleon Hill, and he wrote it, but it
okay.
wasn't published until years after he died because he was afraid that the way people would take the story, and so it didn't get published until after. It's a cool way of reading with questions and answering, but like but what it's getting after is that ultimately the devil gets after all of us through fear. And that, when you fear something, you're afraid of something, it causes you to act differently. And then he gets after that through making people not think for themselves, so society forces you to kind of to go in a certain direction, and you're not thinking for yourself anymore, and
Hmm,
that kids
hmm,
grow up with their parents or other people kind of thinking for them, and they just
hmm.
start drifting through life without thinking through themselves. And I feel like it ties in with right after Strength to Strength as well. Those are the ones I'm going through right now.
Yeah, these ideas are dangerous because they give you like a sort of 3D view of the world around you. And when you see things, you, it's hard because you understand what you're seeing on a different level, and then you have to translate that for the people who don't see what you see.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna tell you a quick story that happened to me when I on the tarmac at JRTC and reading Arthur Brooks's book made me think about this. We're sitting outside the C-17s on the tarmac about to go jump, and I'm a jump master. I went to jump master school back in 2012, I think it was, a long time ago. And so when you get back into the division, you got to go to JMR, jump master refresher training, so you can get the training. I did that back in June. But that JMPI sequence is, I mean, that's a lesson in attention to detail like I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And once you get into it, you can atrophy if you don't get into that practice. So, if you're a leader, you want to be out there with your paratroopers and you want to instill confidence, and you do that by helping out on these jumps. So, I took my top off and I'm going out through the JMPI. I get to my RTO, who always jumps with me. It's the same trooper that looked at me and was like, "Hey, sir, I was scared, but when I looked at you, I could do anything."
Yeah.
Making the
Yes.
Kool-Aid. Yeah, so I JMPI him, and in the back of my mind, I'm not really confident in my sequence, like because I hadn't done it in a while. And so I JMPI him, I move on to two other jumpers, and I'm getting into this rhythm. And a peer commander of mine pulled me aside, and he said, "Hey, Trivius, I think you need to stop JMPIing because you JMPI one of the soldiers, found some deficiencies. He asked for another paratrooper, another jump master JMPI him. Oh, talk about my feelings being hurt. I mean, uh, that was a point where I did not instill confidence in the paratrooper. The day before, the
Yeah.
night of the jump, we're an
Yeah.
hour before we're about to load. And, I had to eat some crow. And I went up to that sergeant who's in my battalion and I thanked him. I said, "Hey, man, thank you for making that call. That was the absolute right call." It made me look at myself as a leader and say, okay, my tasks have atrophied. I need some retraining. I stopped JMPI. And the three jumpers I JMPI prior to him had to get re-inspected. I had to sit and watch that.
Yeah.
And I'm the battalion commander. And my goodness, that was a punch in the gut. And, I sat with that on the jump in and the whole night before we walked down to the objective. And I said, the first thing I'm going to do when I get back is I'm going to start shadow boxing. I'm going to get some help and read JMPI and get back into the sequence. I've been studying that, reading the case op and things like that. But it goes to show you that you never really arrive.
Yeah.
There's always something that you can work on because in this business, paratroopers can die
Yeah.
if you're not focused and tuned in. So that just humbled me quite a bit. And again, a lot of lessons coming out of JRTC.
Yeah. Imagine the leadership lesson that anybody that saw that or participates in that learns is that nobody's too good to be called out, and to
Nobody.
check, like, right. We always hear nobody outranks safety, right? But like the NCOs
Yeah.
who feel like they were supported, to say those things. I was just
Oh
hanging out
yeah.
with my first sergeant or my sergeant major, and he said, "You remember Chaplain Shields? He was the best jump master we ever know because he was chaplain. He'd say anything to anybody, if
Yeah.
your sequence was off or if you said something in pre-jump, but boy, nobody was a better jump master than Charlie Shields, and he
Oh
would
yeah.
let you know it, if you were off, but it made us all better because we were all getting back in there and trying to do it. What big decisions you got coming up? What are you thinking about right now? The next couple
Ooh.
months.
Ooh. Man, I probably shouldn't say this on tape. You
These are the
know,
best ones.
I'm thinking about the battalion, but I mean that's a cheat. I'm trying to lean forward and thinking about the next JRTC rotation and staying focused on where I am. But quite frankly, I got a decision to make with my boss. Because I went up and I interviewed for the West Point job, and I'm torn. I love paratrooping. I love soldiers. I love it, and it's great. And so I'm torn between two worlds. This is the one of the downsides of getting brought in too much, because I went and did this PhD, and I'm supposed to go back to West Point to teach, and so I went up and I interviewed for the deputy department head job, and they're still deliberating on that. But you know, man, I want to be a brigade commander too,
Yeah.
and so I need to stay focused, but at the same time, it ain't about me right now. It's about these paratroopers, and I want to lean in to them. But I'm also thinking about my family, and like the stability of my family and the turbulence associated with multiple moves and things like that. And so again, that Arthur Brooks book sort of brought all of that back to light. And the decision I'm making, I am in in real time making this decision is to follow my own advice, is to do the right thing in the moment I'm in,
Yeah.
which is to focus on my battalion and its readiness as we assume the immediate response force. That's all that matters right now, is that we can go win the nation's wars when we're called upon, so I can bring my paratroopers back home. That is the right thing to focus on. And so I am trying to block all of this other stuff out of my head and focus on the moment that I'm in.
Yeah, I think it's healthy though to think about, the long term and the future, and then bring it back to the moment that you happen to be in. Because
Yeah.
if you don't think about the long term and all you think about is the near future, you will miss either opportunity or you will not be prepared for what's happening right in front of you. You are not prepared for.
You're gonna miss it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. The metaphor is, I don't know if I shared this with you. I went out and bought a hourglass. And did I share this with you?
I got mine right here. Mine's sitting
You
right
got
next.
one?
My hourglass is sitting right next to me, right here on the left.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
So the idea that if you don't focus on that point of convergence where that sand goes from top to bottom, you're too focused on the future, which is the top lump of
Yeah.
sand. You miss you miss the moment that you can actually see the granulars of sand going through that small little funnel, and you miss the opportunity to impact the present moment that you're in because you either focus on the future or
Hmm.
you're too focused on the past, which is the bottom residue that drips down there. So I have to stay conscious to focus on the moment that I'm in, and I'm trying to not let anything else distract me because I got, near 733 paratroopers that if I make a decision, it's going to create either work or challenges for them, and I just got to stay focused.
Yeah. And I think it allows you to be focused because you have thought about the future and you have reviewed the past, and that allows you to know at the precise moment, what we need right now in this precise moment because you've thought about those things. It's not just
Yeah,
one. When people say focus in the moment, it doesn't mean you're not studying the past, and it doesn't mean you're not anticipating the future. That's why you're able to be hyper focused in the moment right now.
yeah. I had a good mentor tell me 2 days ago. He said, Trivius, you need to take some time and think about and revisit the Army values. Not that I have a problem with the Army values, but as you grow as a leader and you grow as a professional, your understanding of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage, it changes. Not for the worse, hopefully not for the worse, but maybe your understanding deepens.
Hmm.
And so as a meditative practice, taking some time to think about loyalty, to think about duty in the moment that you're in, all of these things. I found that to be a helpful sort of meditation,
Yeah.
to refocus, recenter me on the task at hand.
Yeah. What did we not talk about that you'd hope we were going to talk about during this quick one?
Well, this was quick, and I didn't script anything, so I don't.
I know
I,
you've been shining your shoes the whole time. I've been watching you shine your
yeah,
shoes. So for anybody that's out there thinking Trivius has got like a whole board in front of him with all his notes and everything prepared, he's been shining his shoes the whole time. I'm wondering if you're going to ever shine the left shoe because you've been working on
yeah,
that
yeah,
right one. Okay, all right, there I see it now. Yeah,
yeah,
but he's
yeah,
been
yeah,
shining
yeah,
his
yeah.
shoes the whole time that we've been talking, and no, but I want to leave some things for our next conversation. What do you want to talk about next time we
Yeah.
get together?
So I want to recap. Yeah, I just did 17 interviews of captains who want to join this brigade, and I guess I feel like, and I'm typing this up for my lieutenants now. I'm seeing some trends, some good and some not so great things that I think junior officers can focus on when they present themselves, whether that's on paper or vocally over an interview. You know, some of the questions I'm asking having to do with hey, describe moments of professional anxiety. Have you ever disagreed with your boss and how did you handle that? You know, I'm asking these questions to these captains and whatnot. So maybe some TTPs about interviewing in the marketplace, because people want to put their best foot forward, but sometimes they don't know how to do that. They want to come off genuine with some humility, and then networking kind of goes into that too. So how do you put your best foot forward without being manipulative, right? Without posturing, because people can see that a mile away too. So that's only on my mind because I interviewed like seven captains yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that very fitting because JPMRC, we are recruiting significantly right now to build the Army's newest combat training center, here in the Pacific.
yeah,
We are recruiting heavily. One, in the market with the people that are coming
hmm
out here that are in the market right now, that are filling positions that we do have in the market. but more importantly, with the dozens of people that we are interviewing every day for future positions that are going to come open next summer, next fall, people that are coming out of positions. We call those out of market hires, so that you're locking something in before you go into the market, not while.
Yeah, I saw your flyer. I saw your flyer on social media, so word's getting around.
Yeah.
For sure.
We did a town hall. Yeah. We did a town hall here at Schofield Barracks with people in person. We also had it on Teams so that people could dial in. We had I think there was 100 something people dialed in. We weren't even able to field questions from everybody that was dialed in. But what we did do is we recorded that town hall and we put it up on YouTube. So it's up there. You can listen to it. You can watch it. You can hear the questions that people asked about joining JPMRC. Because I just turned in, my big decision is that we just turned in our annual assessment to General Clark on where we see the future of JPMRC and how we've been running this last year. And the bottom line is that the North Star is sound. The direction that we are heading with the new Combat Training Center is on track right now. And it's on track to come together faster. It already is, right? So we're about to execute the biggest exercise we've ever done here in November with the 25th Infantry Division, right? But the three ways that we're going to get towards that North Star is through people transformation and winning. And the people, our operations group is the center of gravity for a combat training center. And if we bring in the right leaders, captains, NCOs, first sergeants, people that are going to be first sergeants, you bring in those right people, that you will be able to operate as an ops group in these exercises. You got to transform and modernize. We have to modernize the combat training centers, and General George got us focused on, the 4 areas where you modernize a CTC through the ops group, through the modernization of the OP4 that presents itself looking like our adversary, through the leadership development, and then we're modernizing the leader training program, LTP, on how we do that, and then modernize how we collect information and collect data and then share it with everybody. If we modernize those 4 areas over the next few months and year or so and continue to refine it, we're going to be in good shape, which then is our third pillar, which is winning. And we win through these exercises, these rehearsals that we're doing, and then ultimately here in the Pacific through pathways and into the Philippines and west of the international date line, so that we're doing our rotations and our CTC rotations on the terrain and the dirt with the people that we could be asked to do it with for real.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. Just a huge shout out to the non-commissioned officer corps. I just want to take a moment real quick to comment about the talent that exists in these young people, men and women, these non-commissioned officers. They're outstanding, and they're at the tip of the spear of what we do, and nothing we did at JRTC is without their effort. And for the junior officers that are listening and the captains that are listening, we owe them the best training that we can give them, because they're the ones going to set that breach. They're the ones throwing the smoke for the obscuration to open that thing up, and they do it without hesitation. I've seen it, and they're phenomenal. And so I'm really inspired by what I've seen at JRTC, and even these captains that I'm interviewing, they're sharp. I mean, the talent pool and the knowledge these young people have about, AI innovation is just through the roof. And we got to leverage that. We got to find a way to automate these systems and take advantage of these artificial intelligence platforms so that we can compete. We can continue to compete. But the non-commissioned officers I'm pretty inspired by what I see.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Same thing out here with the 25th Infantry Division. It doesn't matter where you go. All soldiers are entitled to outstanding leadership, and we're finding those pockets of excellence everywhere I go. I just came back from AUSA, and I was so inspired by the amount of support that we have for leadership development out there. My favorite part was when Sergeant Major of the Army and all the Sergeant Majors got together and talked about leadership development and how they're gonna get the NCOs, the backbone of the Army, to take this leadership development. And it's just a reminder of the things that got us to where we're at right now and made the Army what it is. So it was really inspiring to be out there with all those people.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, the only reason I'm shining these shoes today is because Colonel Klepper posted a photo of some cadet's shoes that were just mirror shine. This morning, I saw it this morning.
Yes.
And I was like, damn it, I know what I'm doing today. And so
Shining
this is
them
the only
shoes.
reason. Yeah, that's right.
I know he would appreciate that, too, because he's doing the same. He's doing the same. Well, I really appreciate this, man. I really appreciate catching up. 1, 2, learning from what you did at JRTC. It's so timely because we're getting ready to roll into November's exercise with the Bronco Brigade and, the 25th Infantry Division. So it's so timely that, that there's people out there that are going to be curious what you learned and how we can immediately implement it into this. And I can't wait to listen to your conversation with Ricky Taylor, in the Crucible, and get into some even more of the details on what you learned while you were out there.
Yeah. That conversation is a group of folks on there that help with that. Non-commissioned officer, command sergeant major on there, and another peer battalion commander, and so that'd be a good one once they publish it. But I appreciate you. This is great because it was unscripted, and you called me up and we just talked. We always do this.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love doing these, and I love catching up, and it fires me up, man. So I'm already looking forward to the next time we get together, and we can talk about some of that interview stuff.
Yeah, for sure, sir. For sure.
All right, my man. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, sir. Well,
bye.
Bye-bye.
Hour and 6 minutes.
That's it. Oh man, that's a quick hitter. Yeah. So my staff put together a series of white papers. I'm going to send them your way from every warfighting function, what they learned at JRTC. That might help some folks out. I'm collating them now, and then I'm writing one on ISVs. So I'll put all that stuff together, and I'll send it your way.
I can't wait to read it, brother.
Yeah.
Good luck with those shoes.
Good.
Have a good rest of your day. It's good to see you.
You too, sir.
You look like $1 million, man. I'm going to go do PT again so I can start looking like you more.
Yeah, well, if I get me a set of headphones that look that good, I'll be close to you.
Please. All right, airborne.
All the way, sir. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening today. I hope we sparked some thoughts about the people that have inspired you to be who you are today. I hope you share some of your thoughts and, better yet, demonstrate them for the people in your life. Our pursuit is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories stacked on top of each other, building like compound interest. Keep stacking these positive habits. Habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people. Please share your comments at the links in the show notes and DM us at Teach Me to Fish podcast on Instagram or Facebook. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind.